Hostology, a customizable online solution to higher functioning event management.
Webinar, but it's been quite a journey, and as some of you may have been on the call, I think 3 weeks ago we had Jane kindly joined us then, and we've got Jane Radell, as I mentioned earlier, from Farah & Co. So Jane does quite a lot of work with venues, working on their terms and conditions, contracts, other issues. Jane will probably tell us when she's not fully versed on something, but she'll definitely have a view on those things, I think. And just a bit of housekeeping, if everybody could just mute themselves, that'd be great. Otherwise we get a bit of feedback. And if you'd like to ask a question, we've had a couple of questions in. We're going to talk through quite a few issues today. I'm sure some of you will have specific questions for Jane, or two things there. One is we are recording this session, so just do bear in mind not to mention particular clients' names or anything that you might not want to be recorded. And the other thing is to ask a question. The best thing is to use the chat, which is at the top. It's a little kind of icon at the top with some lines in it. If you click on that, you'll see a chat box open up, and you can just type your question in there and we can see it. And I'll try and field those for Jane, collect them together. But today we're going to look at a couple of things. We're going to revisit some of the contractual issues that we were talking about a few weeks ago. So I know some of you have had lots and lots of questions and thoughts around postponements and whether you keep the same contract date and all those sort of issues and so on. So we're going to revisit some of that in the light of some developments in the last month. As you know, the CMA coming out and saying that the customer must be refunded, various movements. So we had, obviously we spoke to Harriet Baldwin last week about insurance, and she updated us on the business side of insurance, and then also recommended that customers, the consumer side, go to the financial ombudsman to seek redress if they feel that they're being unfairly treated by their insurer. But on the other hand, there is also a question about whether the insurance company will pay up to the customer but then come after the venue. So I know that this is a very, very complex area, and Jane is going to help us try and untangle a few of the bits and pieces. So Jane, I mean, do you want to kick off? I mean, I think we talked about looking at what's going on right now, and then obviously we might also talk about what might happen in the future. So fingers crossed, at some point in the next few weeks, we'll hear some good news about being able to allow private gatherings again, and certainly licensed weddings, but what the implications are from the legal point of view on having a smaller gathering that people may not want on either side. So Jane, do you want to kick off with just updating us on some of the payment terms issues around? I think we had a couple of questions in about what was we've had a few kind of questions about reasonable costs, which might be useful to go over if somebody is asking for cancellation. And then the other thing is in terms of keeping to payment terms based on your original contract, and what the legalities are around that.
Yeah, okay, so I'm going to talk for a while about what's happened since I last spoke, which was
great.
April. Look to the future, and then I'll focus on some of the questions that I've already received, and then I can see that there are some questions ticking in, but just so I don't get too confused, I'm going to not look at those right now. So the current position, we're still in lockdown. We've seen the government roadmap that says, you know, there's not much change until the 1st of June. Potentially from the 1st of June, they'll consider how to enable slightly larger gatherings for weddings. Well, they mentioned small weddings in particular. I don't think we're clear what a small wedding is at this stage, but I think we can be quite confident that most of your venues are not in the market of, you know, mainly hosting weddings of the size anticipated by this guidance. We've also had the CMA guidance, as Emma mentioned. So we've had a statement from the CMA saying that it's had lots of complaints about coronavirus-related consumer issues. The 3 areas where they've got the most complaints are childcare, holiday, and unfortunately, the wedding sector. So the CMA are launching an investigation into various practices within the sector, and has also issued some guidance that it suggests people follow in the meantime. So it does say that the vast majority of businesses are being reasonable and honourable, which is great, but there are exceptions to that, and they just want people to know that they are watching. In terms of who the CMA will investigate, this will be triggered by specific complaints that they receive. So if a hirer feels particularly aggrieved about what you have done in terms of their wedding, then they can complain to the CMA. The CMA is resource limited, obviously, and it's keen to make as big an impact as possible. So our sense is that it will go after the most egregious breaches of consumer legislation first, or it may target venues or businesses that own a large number of venues or have a particularly high churn of weddings so that they can kind of make the most impact. If you are going to be investigated by the CMA, our sense is that you will hear about that sooner rather than later. I've not heard, and I'm not asking anyone to volunteer, as to whether any of you have been specifically approached by the CMA. If you have, then you may need some kind of specific legal advice relating to the specific points that they're raising. But for now, I'm going to assume that none of you have actually had a complaint. So we're just focusing on the related guidance at the CMA.
Hostology, a customizable online solution to higher functioning event management.